Hey guys, going to do a quick review, or as quick as I can do, and hit all the major hot topics that you might see on the Regents that we haven't got a chance to make a big video for. Anyways, I want to talk about the Populist Party. It's known as a third party. It starts really because problems that the farmers are having. Remember, the farmers are overproducing. Land is costing a lot. They're borrowing lots of money to pay for more land, and that's driving the price of their product down because they're overproducing. They create the Grange, or a cooperative where they're sharing of resources. Anyways, this populist party comes along, and they want the government to take control of railroads because railroads are charging farmers a lot of money. And they also introduce us to this concept of free silver, which was a way to put more money in the economy and create inflation. That's the populist party, third party. Let's talk about the industrial age inside the United States, or the industry age. It's also referred to sometimes as the Gilded Age on the Regents. Hey, and in history books. Go figure. Let's see. I want you to remember Thomas Edison, the light bulb, Alexander Graham Bell, the telephone, Andrew Carnegie with the Bessemer process. The Bessemer process is important for you guys to recall. Remember, that was a way to mass produce steel. Rockefeller in the oil business, Standard Oil. I want you to remember the terms laissez-faire, which means keep government out of the economy. Less regulation is always better for businesses, at least in the minds of the robber barons, the big business owners. Social Darwinism, survival of the fittest. Right, those big business owners believed if the little businesses couldn't compete, they should die. And of course, I want you to remember that monopolies and trusts, as far as the regents go, are the same thing. Unions are created to protect the rights of workers. They want the workers work less hours, have safer working conditions. At the Haymarket riot, August spies called for 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours of recreation. And today, that's how our day is broken up. We want you to remember the names Samuel Gompers and Eugene Debs. They were labor union leaders, so they fought for the workers' rights. I do want you to remember this. For a long time, the government actually sided on the side of big businesses. So it's really not until Teddy Roosevelt where we see a change in that. The name Mother Jones comes up once in a while, and she was a person who fought for child labor laws. The Chinese Exclusion Act comes out of the labor union movement because they want to limit the number of immigrants coming into this country. That way workers would have more power. You want to remember the word nativism. Remember, that was limiting immigrants. They called them the new immigrants from southeastern Europe. And the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire happens during this time period too. Remember, I think it's 100+ girls lose their lives. The doors were locked. They opened in instead of out. The hoses didn't work. Gosh darn mosquitoes. I'm outside. I love summer. Okay, that's pretty much labor unions. Got to hit segregation real quick. Just glancing at my notes. Remember, Jim Crow, black codes, relatively the same thing. It created segregation in the South. It was a way that southern states could keep African Americans from really being equal, even though they were supposed to be under the 14th Amendment. They used poll taxes. You had to pay a tax in order to vote. Literacy tests. You had to read. Sometimes you had to write. Let's see, grandfather clauses. Grandfather clauses were a way to continue to allow whites to vote because many couldn't pay the poll tax, many couldn't read or write. Want to remember the court case Plessy v. Ferguson. That created separate but equal. Let's talk about the progressive movement. Remember, the progressives want to help people, want to make their lives better. or at least move them a little bit more towards the middle class. Want to make their lives safer. They're also called muckrakers. A political party is created around the progressives called the Bull Moose Party. They rarely ask that, but I want to make you better U.S. history students than maybe some others. Anyways, some terms you want to remember from progressives: initiative, referendum, recall. These are terms that give us, the people, the voters, more power. Initiative means we can propose a bill. Referendum is where public officials allow the public to vote on an open issue such as gay marriage. And recall is allowing us to recall public officials. The 17th Amendment is passed. That is the direct election of senators. It was very corrupt before the 17th Amendment. Some people that you want to remember: Jacob Riis, How the Other Half Lives, Sinclair, The Jungle. Jane Addams created Hull House, right, a kind of kindergarten, a soup kitchen. Teddy Roosevelt is also known as a progressive, and you want to remember his square deal. He's also known as a trust buster and as a conservative. He passes the Meat Inspection Act, the Pure Food and Drug Act, and that later creates the FDA. Also during this time period, the 19th Amendment is passed, and that is women's suffrage. Okay, the 18th Amendment is also passed, and that created prohibition. And of course, prohibition started from the temperance movement, and the temperance movement began when women were fighting for their right to vote. Imperialism is when we go beyond our vision of manifest destiny from East Coast to West Coast. We're heading out to the Pacific Ocean. We're looking for places to sell or continue to sell our finished products. We're also looking for coaling stations. We want to reach the great country of China. There are lots of people who live there, and we economically want to take advantage of that. We annex Hawaii. There's a great harbor there. It's called Pearl Harbor. We purchased Alaska. It was called Seward's Folly, but later on we discovered oil there, so whose folly was it? We purchased it from Russia, by the way. The Spanish-American War is going to begin because of yellow journalism. Remember, it was the stretching of the truth, sometimes absolute outright lying, the explosion of the Maine. We take the Philippines, we take Cuba, Puerto Rico really becomes a protectorate of us. We create the open door policy. Europe was starting to carve China into spheres of influence, and of course we didn't want to lose our sphere of influence. We create the Panama Canal. That was Teddy Roosevelt, in order to move shipping quicker from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. The Roosevelt Corollary comes about. Remember, that's an extension of the Monroe Doctrine, so it's protecting Latin America. Dollar diplomacy comes out, and that was to give aid, monetary aid, to Latin American countries to protect American business interests. World War I. Want you to remember the phrase Maine, M-A-I-N. Reasons for World War I that started: Maine, militarism, building up of our military. A, the alliance system, the secret alliances. I, imperialism. We just discussed that in the last chapter here. And N, nationalism, pride in one's country. Main reasons why the United States gets involved is unrestricted submarine warfare. President Wilson thought that the seas, I apologize, should be free and open to trade, and of course Germany didn't want that to happen. And the sinking of the Lusitania. The main reason is unrestricted submarine warfare, because after the sinking of the Lusitania, we don't declare war until 2 years after that. The way we fight the war is trench warfare, so we really don't move the lines very much during the war. Court case comes out. It's called Schenck v. United States. Schenck was burning his draft card in opposition to the war. It went to the Supreme Court in actually 1919. The war ended in 1918, but the Supreme Court said this offered a clear and present danger. So in times of a national emergency, certain civil liberties can be restricted or limited. The Great Migration happens during this time period. African Americans from the South moved northward because many of the men who went over the seas to fight the war left job openings. So African Americans came and took those jobs. We win the war. Yay! I know, spoiler. Woodrow Wilson creates the League of Nations. He thinks this is going to be a plan for peace so that this war, the war to end all wars, will never happen again. Congress, because they have to approve treaties, say no to the League of Nations because in Wilson's 14 points, the 14th point said, any nation who joins the League of Nations that comes under attack, all nations will come to their aid, and of course that would get rid of a check and balance, so Congress said no. Before I close out, since I talked about Schenck v. United States, I want to go back to the Civil War. A question once in a while that they throw at you is the suspension of habeas corpus. Abraham Lincoln did this during the Civil War for people who were speaking out against the war and the war effort. He was holding people without charging them. So that's kind of where the precedent was set. So once in a while you'll see that on the Regents. Habeas corpus. Know it. Love it. Learn it. Hey, that's the end. It's starting to get dark out here and I'm probably starting to bother my neighbors. So I hope that helps you guys. Geez, we went from what? Imperialism through segregation, through the industry, and all the way to World War I. I'm going to make you guys one more review video. We'll go World War II to President Obama, and I will try and get that to you this weekend. Good luck. Keep studying, you guys. Almost over. Almost over. Finish.